Hi, welcome to Self-Made Author, where we're going to write, edit, and publish a book in 60 days. It sounds like a crazy thing, but we're going to do it. My name is Linda Forrest, and I am an author, speaker, muse, and mentor. As a muse, I work with authors specifically to inspire their process and to overcome things like writer's block. So some time ago, I created a workshop called Writer's Block is Real, but that doesn't make it necessary. And while teaching that workshop, I was struck by the prospect of inspired writing. And I wanted to expand the workshop into a course where I could offer more detail on the process of writing a novel. So I'm going to bring a lot of that workshop into this course, but I'm also going to expand it and include the detail that I didn't include the last time into that process that gives you a finished work in the end. I am a discovery style writer, and I do think at some level that discovery is critical to being a writer at all. So I want to open that door for others, but I think writing also needs structure. So I've partnered with Elizabeth Suggs of editing me to bring the critical piece of planning to our conversation so that we can create for you a really well-rounded perspective of writing that gives you all of the components to make completing your project really easy. So in this first session, our topic is the self-made storyline. And what we're going to do here is we're going to explore your book before writing your book. So this first week is all about solidifying a concept and creating a plan for moving forward. We'll get more into outlining, so actually laying out that plan next session, but this session is all about making sure you have that strong foundation. We'll clarify where the story begins, and for those of you that already have work started or have had something in mind, we're going to do these practices, and it's just going to be about choosing the best one. A lot of these practices we'll use in the coming weeks to stimulate writing if ever we stall or anything like that. So this is really about tools, accumulating tools. Some of the tools you'll use and some you won't, but they're all available as you write so that you need never face the issue of block or not being sure where the story will go next. So I'll be working with you on how to create a discovery style concept, and then Liz will go through with you the who, what, when, where, why, and how of writing. This way you can begin with a clear concept to outline in the next session. So to begin today, I want to talk about what the process of writing is. And we'll return to the workshop I mentioned to do that. So I want to start with, I love this quote: all creation is the result of observation. And this is where we make a mistake a lot. A lot of people tend to think that creation is contrived, that it's something that they make. Creation is not contrived. Evolution is contrived. So evolution is moving forward. Creation, the definition of creation is to bring something into existence that has never existed before. So I always talk about the best way to see this is in religious philosophy. So when you look at evolutionists are saying something existed and then something happened to modify that existence, and then they existed as something else. So it started as one thing and became another. But any creationist religion says there was a point where nothing existed and then something new came into existence. And so creation is really that act of something new coming into existence. Now, the only way that can happen is through a level of observation. So in order to create a new thing, our brain, we may not consciously observe it, but our brain has to have observed another possibility. And that possibility comes in the term what if, generally, right? It's saying, okay, this exists, but what if this could exist, or what if I like to go back right to the original creation that most of us talk about with human development, which was the creation of the wheel. That was purely human invention that said, I can make something that makes everything easier. But somebody had to say, what if I could make that thing? That's what we're here to do as writers, is to ask, what if? What if this story could happen? Or what if I could put this down on paper? All writing begins with the brain asking, what if? So we're going to ask that, and it's going to be about making it easy. And we're going to dig into the details. So what we're going to do is we're going to dig into this creating a story. So we're going to create a scene. So that's where we're going to begin. And then we're going to create characters. And then from that, we're going to create a story. I want to begin with this quote here. You are not writing a book. You are telling a story. And we're going to take this new approach to storytelling, because so many times writers are trying to write a book that will sell. And when we try to write a book that will sell, it comes off as contrived. If you've ever seen the movie Groundhog Day, there's that one magical night they have, and then he keeps trying to recreate that night, and it gets weird and awkward. And that's what happens when we try to write a book. And we do that in our life too, is when we try to make a situation happen, it gets weird and awkward. But when we just tell a story, that's when things are interesting. And so the very first thing we want to be doing is telling a story, not writing a book, right? And so having that story component to it, however it's composed, whatever it's comprised of, we want to have it be that we are in a storytelling process. And then we want to be observing that story, right? We talked about creation is observation. So we're observing the story. There are several options for creating your story in this session. To begin, I'll offer a few discovery style writing prompts. When you're done with these exercises and have decided on the story you want to tell, I have one final discovery writing exercise for you to help you prepare for a practice we will do in the next session. So what we're going to do is I am going to force a story here. That's a new creation. And so what we want to do is have our writing instruments available. And with our writing instruments, we are going to actually begin our story. We're going to begin, and what we're going to do in this is we're going to be saying, what do I want to create? What's the end result of what I want to create? But what I'm going to do is have you think of the story aspect. So you're going to think about every fairy tale that you've ever heard that didn't end the way you wanted, or maybe movie that was a favorite that didn't end the way you wanted, but it created this powerful idea in your mind. And so what we're going to do is we're going to write that end scene that we wanted in all the movies we saw. So what's the best possible end scene that you can imagine having in your life? And what you're going to do is you're going to write just a brief synopsis of the scene. Where is your character? What's the environment? What's the scene that you see? How many people are in it? Where is your character in it? So you're not writing a detail of the character. You're just giving me the final scene of a movie before end credits roll. There are writing prompts and sections for entering text in the practices below. Or if you choose to use a journal or a document or a writing program, we will be going over some of those in a future session. But if you want to start on any of those and don't want to put your work on the website, that's fine. You can go ahead and hit finish practice without entering any text to the field. If you do decide to use the writing field on the website, there are instructions for how to access your work at the end of this first session. You can pause the video here to write your scene. We will work on outlining in the next session. We'll also talk about how to begin your book, but before we do, it's important to establish the leading character in our stories. Authors often make the mistake of letting something else, like life may be in charge, or our boss may be in charge, our job, whether it gives us enough money or not. Whether we find that significant other, right? If we look at our story like a rom-com, it may be, oh, well, but I haven't found my happily ever after. Like all these external factors become the leading driving force in the story, where a really good story, the character is going to drive the story. The rest are scenes, but oftentimes we let the happily ever after, that thing, drive the story, right? The plot drives the story more than the character. And I think the most powerful stories there are the books that are driven by the character. So I think one of the best books I've ever read was Flowers for Algernon by John Steinbeck. This book was amazing to me because it was completely from the character's perspective, and watching the character's evolution. It was written journal style, and it's interesting because I fell in love with the book at a very young age. And yeah, a lot of my books have been written journal style, but it's following this journey of this character through their internal process, which makes it really powerful. And I think that's what we relate to in books and stories, is that the character, we find them relatable or not relatable, and we connect to their experience. If it doesn't have that, this is where they talk about the difference between show and tell. And I'm going to talk about a few things to do with this. But right now we're going to be writing a story from the character's perspective, but they do need to be the leading role in the story so that they're not just a supporting character. And this leading role really is about the character having this opportunity to experience a new dream, right? This outcome that wasn't there before. So the arc of a story that we're generally trying to force as writers is this arc that says the story begins here, meets a challenge, and ends somewhere. But instead thinking of it as the challenge, if the character is pursuing a dream, the challenge comes organically. So when I'm looking at this, what I'm looking at is the protagonist of the story, right? I think that the best antagonist in a story is the one that surprises even the author. And that creates the interest in the story, right? If it's an easy outcome, that story doesn't have any interest. That book doesn't sell. But our focus we want it to be on the protagonist's experience through the story. And that protagonist will organically meet resistances. And that's what happens as we're writing our story, is even if we as an author are meeting resistances, it's felt in the story and it creates interest in the plot. So I watch too many people force this, where it's kind of like, okay, what can go wrong? What can go wrong? And then all of a sudden the story becomes about everything that can go wrong, rather than the experience of growth and progression that I think is the part of the best stories. For example, like Flowers for Algernon, I think Steinbeck's really good at this entirely, is that you get the experience of the characters, and it's so experiential that it's challenging sometimes to read Steinbeck. But you're so involved in the experience of the character's growth that it's not antagonist focused. So we're not going to put focus there. We're going to let that occur organically through the challenges of the growth. The dream is what organically creates that. In addition to that, looking at supporting cast. So the supporting cast also becomes organic to the story. And so who is your character in this end scene? What have they accomplished? What is the end of their story? You can just hit pause while you are doing this. The final thing we'll talk about this week is perspective. As you look at the end scene and the character, you want to be considering perspective. We're not going to worry about any of the details of the story or the outline, but we do need to establish which story we want to tell. Do you want your character to tell their story, or do you want to tell it for them? Also, do you want to use past or present tense? We'll go into more detail about this later, but this week we'll give you the opportunity to play a little with the idea of point of view. Who's telling the story? And are they telling you about it as it happens, or are they recounting it? For those of you who are new to writing, recounting with an omniscient view is generally easiest. But follow your heart and what creates the best feel for your story. Again, we have some exercises that can help you decide what that is. In the meantime, just jot down a general idea. I'll now turn the time over to Liz to help you get into some of the details for the who, what, when, where, why, and how of planned writing. If you need to connect with me at any point, please email me, or you can reach out on social media through the Contact Us link on the Inspired Evolution Project homepage. You can always access that homepage by clicking the icon in the upper left-hand corner of your course. I hope you enjoy the journey. Here's Liz.
Hi everyone, my name is Elizabeth Suggs. I am the owner of Editing Me and the co-owner to Collective Tales Publishing. A little bit about me, why I like to edit and I like to publish is it's just, this is living the dream, and I love to help other authors get to that dream as well. More often than not, authors go through a whole, trial of creating a book, but if they don't have some kind of helping hand, then they just kind of fall off the wasteland. So we don't want that to happen. And what I'm hoping with this project, you will be able to actually get to that point and feel very confident. My favorite authors are the ones who, while they are really creative, they paint a picture with writing. Let's paint that picture with your writing, but let's also paint it with marketing and business and formatting, because all of these aspects don't really seem that important at first, but they are. There are different aspects to it, and it can seem overwhelming, but that is why Linda and I are here to help you.
All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to Self-Made Planner, the 5 W's and an H. I'm Elizabeth Suggs. Let's get started. Let's briefly go over the who, what, when, where, why, and how this presentation will proceed. Who is giving this presentation? It's me, Elizabeth Suggs, and I will be giving this presentation and helping you work through the lesson material. If you have any questions during the lesson, don't hesitate to reach out with my email, theliz@editingme with the 2e's.com. And that's at the very beginning of the presentation, and it will be on the last slide as well. What is this presentation about? This presentation is about the 5 W's and H, which will help you in your story. When are we expected to finish? The slides themselves will take about 10 minutes, but it may take longer with how in-depth you want to plan your story. And there's going to be a lot of options to pausing the video, taking your time. So, where are we doing this? In the comfort of our own homes. I'll be at my house and you'll be at yours. You'll be sharing your work and participating in group discussions on the Editing Me Facebook page if you want. Contact me if you have any questions about joining. Why is this information valuable to you? Well, if you want to establish characters, plot, or setting, it's vital to your story. And how will you apply what you learned? By creating your plan and your story, right? So to get started, we're going to go through some exercises to practice these skills. You'll hear the 5 W's and H talked a lot about in journalism, but I also think it's necessary to talk about it in regards to creating a book. The reason? It helps establish where the characters are, when the story takes place, who your characters are, what are the motivations, why should they respond that way, and how they can overcome their plight. There are a lot of ways to approach this, but let's keep it simple and focus solely on what's listed here. In this PowerPoint, we're going to work together on creating the building blocks for your characters. Okay, so who is your character? Let's start with the main character. We're not going to go into depth with the other characters, but once you have this character, you can come back and apply these principles to your readers, your audience, to other main characters, your secondary characters, and so on. But first, again, let's talk about your main character. Who are they? For your character, I suggest make some positive and negative traits to keep the plot going, the plot interesting. So for instance, maybe they're a good talker, but they're also impulsive. Maybe they're kind, but they're blunt, right? It's kind of some opposing stuff. I think that's fun. I'd like you to pause this video and take as much time as you need to figure this out. But really, it probably will only take you about 5 minutes to complete. So I'm hoping that you have your who nailed down. So let's go into our what. We need a what to help push the story forward, right? We have a character or characters, depending on how in-depth you got, but that personality will only go so far. Now we need a reason, a what to make the story interesting, to push the story forward, right? The inciting incident. What happens to kick off the story? So hopefully maybe this picture will give you some inspiration, maybe something else entirely. You can look in your house and get some inspiration that way. But pause the video and take about 5 minutes to figure it out. Take, again, more time if needed. Okay. So now you've got your who and your what. Let's talk about your when. This is important because this will depend on whether certain social customs work in your story or not. If this is contemporary and you're using typewriters, right, that might not resonate with your readers. Perhaps you have a fantasy novel, though, that isn't necessarily in the now or in, earthly time, but that's okay. And we still need some kind of when, right? When was your character born? Is there some kind of history in your world? You could give me a futuristic theme or a medieval theme. Having some kind of when will help ground your readers. It gives them something to, really establish themselves. So pause the video and take about 5 more minutes to figure this out. Okay. Got your when, your who, your what. Let's go into where. Is this on a street? In the forest? Similar to the when, we need to figure out the where, right? This can help establish the character's motivations as well. Is your character trapped in a castle, stuck at home and wants to leave? Right? Does your story take place at a school or a horse ranch? Pause the video and take another 5 minutes or more to figure it out. All right. We just have one more W and then an H. So now let's talk about the why. This is crucial to understand the motivations. Why is the story important? Why does it matter? Why do certain things happen? Think about causes and effects within the topic. Just create an overall reason to your story. And hopefully you don't get too confused like this baby here. So pause the video for about 5 minutes and figure out your story and your why. All right. So you've got your who, your what, your where, your why, your when. Now, We just need to talk about your how. How does this happen? How does your story function? Right? How are those involved affected? Pause the video and take another 5 minutes. Take more time if you need. Okay, so you've got everything now, the who, what, when, where, why, how. Let's put it all together. Now you've got the building blocks to your story, right? Go through this presentation as many times as you need. These are your building blocks to creating a plan. In the next planning video, we'll have a more in-depth discussion on how to build your characters, your plot, and your theme.